Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. So I've been thinking, the alarming trend of cancel culture. I know a lot of people, they don't like that term. They think that there's no such thing because it hasn't quite happened to them just yet. And the alarming rise in sort of this morality policing that we're seeing in our culture, which is really nothing new. But it's happening now on a new side of the aisle. This is something that was never really happening on the Democratic side of the aisle before, and now that it is. It has just made me realize that today's Democrats remind me of Republicans back in the 90s. Do they remind you of that as well? Do you remember the 90s when Republicans were completely in bed with the evangelical right wing? Sorry, I'm still having my coffee. Hold on. Let me grab a sip of coffee. I'm trying to wake up still, even though it is evening. I've been really, really tired today. So yes, it says one cat short of a crazy cat lady, just so you guys know. But I only have one cat and one dog. So you can't pin me. This is how I like to live my life. I don't like to fit a box. You've got right wing, left wing, cat people, dog people. I don't like you guys to know what I am. So I have a dog and I have a cat just to keep it even. So I was thinking, let me just kind of start over with this. I was thinking that Democrats today remind me of Republicans from back in the 90s. Republicans back in the 90s were really big on the morality train. Republicans were very much in bed with the evangelical right. They were courting that base. That base was very important to them. It was a base that actually wasn't really part of the Republican Party. That sort of courting religion wasn't really a big thing until around JFK, when there was this sort of rise of anti-Catholicism and it had existed for a while, but they wanted to somehow combat it. And so there was a sort of exerted effort in order to court these other Christians and to combat Catholicism. And so that really seeped into the GOP. And we saw that culturally, how it shifted the Republican Party. And it turned it really into a party of morality, at least what they said, morality, right? They wanted to rule the world based on their worldview. They didn't want certain topics to be taught in schools. I remember when I was a kid growing up in Idaho, very red state, there was debates actually happening on whether or not they should teach evolution in schools. Nowadays in 2021, that sounds really ridiculous, right? Very anti-science to say, no, the only thing we're going to be teaching in schools is God and how God created the earth, and that is it. And we're not going to go into this Big Bang theory or evolution or any of that other nonsense that's not based in the Bible. And there was a lot of talk about there was just a lot of morality that was sort of ruling the day, right? There was obviously the pro-choice, pro-life debate was going strong. But also in the 90s, what was really big was the coming out of gay folks. They were starting to really come out more and more and more when they had felt like they had to really hide more in the 80s and in the 70s. And it was certainly in the 50s and 60s, you just could not be gay. It wasn't a thing. You were not allowed to be at all. And by the time the 90s rolled around, we saw sort of more and more celebrities coming out, but it was really rare and it made a lot of news when they did. And people really treated them like they were sort of an anomaly. And some people were ostracized, or there was discussion about whether or not they were morally fit for society, or if our children should watch that stuff on television. And a lot of people were canceled. A lot of people, cancel culture really was coming from the right back in the 90s and before then as well. But I just want to focus mostly on the 90s. And the Republicans then were just really big into trying to control society with the drinking laws. And there was just a lot of laws that were coming into play. And really, this Christian ideology that was controlling society, they really made a lot of laws that limited freedoms of expression. And anytime they didn't agree with others, they deemed them evil, right? That's what they did. They said, you're evil. They were obsessed with Bill Clinton. If you remember this, Bill Clinton was this sort of, he was the first boomer president that was elected. And he was young and he was playing saxophone and he didn't fit the norm, the political norms. And he defeated the most, George H.W. Bush, who was at that point the most what they called qualified president with the most qualified resume in U.S. history at that point. And here comes Bill Clinton with all of his swagger and women and saxophones. And the Republican Party were just absolutely beside themselves. They could not allow this immoral abomination to take hold of our country. And they made they treated Bill Clinton like he was some sort of an existential threat, and not because of his policies. They agreed with his policies. They were two sides of the same coin for the most part when it came to the Bill Clinton presidency. No, what they did was they took his personal life, his escapades, and they turned him into this moral existential threat for our society. And really, when I look at what has gone on today with the Democratic Party, it really feels like nothing has changed, actually. It feels like we're just reliving the Republican Party of the 90s, but now it's the Democratic Party of today. And ironically, a lot of those Republicans from the 90s actually have defected now, right? They've switched their allegiance. They've said, we cannot tolerate this Donald Trump and this rise of this low-class, uneducated trailer park populism that's rising up. And so a lot of them have switched over, and now they're registered Democrats. So you're getting that same sort of group of people that said, no, we must save morality. The morality Republicans of the 90s are now the Democrats of today. And they've brought in a whole new generation of morality police that we're seeing inside of the Democratic Party. It just really feels like today, if you don't fall in line with their morals and if you don't share their worldview, then you are an abomination. You are evil. Maybe the book has changed. They're not reading the Bible as much. And maybe the God has changed. It's a different God that they worship. But it's nonetheless a form of religion. It feels like a religion. It feels like there is this hold taking over society that is based on a morality. And of course, when you bring this up, and I know maybe many of you watching right now, when you bring this up and you talk to folks, they'll say, well, but this is different. You know, that was God and religion, and they were wrong, right? They were wrong because they were trying to limit freedom of expression, and they were limiting gay people from coming out and living their best lives, and that was immoral. What we're doing is different. How dare you equate it? This is what they say. And that was actually the same rhetoric from the 90s Republicans. They would say, how dare you try to equate us to some other abhorrent group? We are moral. We are following God. We're doing what God said. This is why we're trying to build a nation of family values and all, you know, we're just following God and the Bible, and you're the one who's a heathen, you're the one who's amoral, and you're ruining our society. And so I was just thinking about this a lot, feeling like I was very against the Republicans of the 90s. I've always been a liberal. Since I was born, I was a liberal. And meaning I believed in freedom of life. You know, just live your life the way you want to live your life. Live and let live. Leave people be, mind your own business, and stay out of mine. I'll stay out of yours. You live your life the way you want to live your life. I might not agree with your choices. I might have my own opinions, but it doesn't matter. What does it matter? It shouldn't matter. And that's the way I've always liked to live my life. And we fast forward now today, and that same group of people that I spent many times talking back to and trying to change their minds, and in some cases I was successful in changing minds of really staunch morality Republicans. Now I feel like that same group that I'm having to battle on a regular basis are Democrats. They're coming from the left now. It's not coming from the right. And no, you know, people will say, well, where's the evidence that there's this cancel culture really happening from the Democrats? Where's this evidence that there's something really terrible going on here? That's censorship and silencing and sort of this putting the clamp down on society. Where's the evidence that this is happening? And, you know, we don't really actually have to have evidence of that. If we're feeling it, that is enough to have a chilling effect on our society. If we're feeling like we're hindered, if we're feeling like we can't freely talk to one another, if we're feeling like we can't divulge to somebody what our political stances are. I mean, back in the 90s, if you came out as a liberal, you were ostracized potentially. People thought, oh my gosh, you're one of them. How dare you? How could you possibly be the type that likes Bill Clinton and gay people? Don't you know that's all against God? That's how it was in the 90s. And many of us fought hard against those ideologies. We were very vocal about it, saying, no, that is a wrong mentality to have. What business of it is of yours? What these people want to, how they want to live their life, or who they want to vote for politically, and This was just, even back in the 90s, they turned any liberal, anybody who was considered a liberal was a true existential threat, even being considered potentially a terrorist. I know this because in the 90s, I was an environmental activist in the early 90s, and I actually was placed on a terrorist watch list for being an environmental activist. And now we're seeing this today, right? And I know people are going to say, Kim, how dare you say it's two sides of the same coin? How dare you say that it's all one and the same? When I say now we've got people that are being labeled domestic terrorists who are just Americans voicing their political grievances or voicing their political desires. And then one side points at them and says, no, you are wrong. And you are a terrorist to this country. So, I hesitate to even bring this up because I know so many people say, how dare you make these parallels? How dare you equate these? But the reality is that the feeling is there nonetheless. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and actually he asked me really angrily, did you vote for Donald Trump? Because there I was defending the people at what happened at the Capitol. I do not defend the actual storming of the Capitol building, just like I don't defend the looters and rioters this summer that were smashing businesses. I do think those are one and the same. If you are the type that is going to smash a window and break in somewhere that you're not supposed to be, it doesn't matter to me your motivations or why you're doing it or what anger you carry in your heart and that forced you into that situation. The fact is that you've taken your political viewpoints to a new level, and you've decided that you're going to get angry and show your anger by breaking things and exerting violence on others, right? And so when I was explaining how I didn't see the difference between those two, this person then deduced from that, which I hear all the time, that I must have voted for Donald Trump because I am now defending these terrorists and these insurrectionists. And I said to him, no, I did not vote for Donald Trump. So I said, no, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. But, after I said that, I thought I should have just why do I have to even defend who I voted for in this country? Why are we at a point where I would have to say in defense, like, oh, how dare you accuse me of voting for Donald Trump? Plenty of the people in my life who I love and adore did vote for Donald Trump, quite frankly. My closest family members voted for Donald Trump. I've got both sides going on all around me. And we shouldn't be living in a culture where we feel like we have to put up our guard and say, oh, no, that's not me. I'm not one of them. Those abhorrent people that you think are, I'm not in that crowd. So I just, in reflecting on this, feel like we're seeing this shift. And now here's where it gets really scary, is that the Republican grip, this evangelical grip of the Republican Party lasted a good solid 20 years. Now, you might argue it's still there, but I don't think it is there nearly as much. And the reason is because the younger generation just doesn't really care about religion that much. When you ask new young Republicans, do they believe in God or do they go to church? The majority of them say no. So we're looking at a new generation of Republicans, and they're not so into God and religion. And that is why we're seeing less conversation in the Republican Party about morality, those really strong conversations that were going on in the 80s and in the 90s and all the way into the early 2000s, those have largely disappeared. And you'll notice that really they talk about other things. They're not so focused on God and morality in that way anymore. And it is because of that shifting in their voting base. And so, we're not seeing this, but we did see that grip on the Republican Party for a solid 20 years. 20 years, we saw this sort of GOP right-wing cancel culture that was canceling anyone who sided with gays or sided with pro-choice or voted for that immoral philanderer, Bill Clinton. And we saw that go on for about a solid 20 years. That makes me pretty nervous. That makes me nervous that we might be seeing 20 years of this cancel culture and big tech censorship. I would hope it won't last as long. With the advent of the internet and all of us being online, there is a possibility things accelerate. We have found that with the advent of the internet and all of us being so interconnected, that things that normally would have taken a really, really long time now are sped up quite a bit. So it's possible that we won't be in this cancel culture, big tech censorship, sort of morality policing coming from the left, that you either agree with their ideology or you are just a horrible human being. We might see that doesn't last for a total of 20 years. Let's hope it doesn't, because it's really exhausting. But at this point, it has already lasted and amplified and gotten worse, I would say definitely over the last 4 years, maybe 5 if you count the primary of Donald Trump. I think that we could probably say 5 years we've seen this sort of rise, and it started off fairly mild. It was just how dare you vote for somebody who has been so disgusting in the things that he said and the way he's treated women, and then it escalated, and we saw that it was well, now you're a white supremacist, you're a Nazi, right? And now it's escalated to now you're a domestic terrorist if you agree with this ideology or these people, or if you're at all on that side of the aisle. And, I keep thinking it can't possibly get any worse, but then it does. So I want to bite my tongue. I don't want to say anything because I'm afraid that I'll jinx it and it will get much, much, much worse.